Most people would never stop to look at a 1988 penny. It feels ordinary, almost invisible. But what if I told you that some 1988 Lincoln pennies without a mint mark have quietly sold for hundreds, and in rare cases thousands of dollars, simply because of tiny details most people never notice? The coin we're talking about today is the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. This is a 1-cent coin that millions of Americans have held, spent, or tossed into jars without a second thought. Yet for collectors, this penny represents an interesting moment in U.S. coin history. A year of massive production, subtle changes, and a few surprises hiding in plain sight. A no-mint mark, Lincoln penny means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. For most of U.S. coin history, Philadelphia did not place a mint mark on coins. So if you look at a 1988 penny and there is no small letter under the date, that's not a mistake. That is exactly how it was meant to be. The year 1988 sits quietly near the end of the Cold War era. The United States was stable, inflation was under control, and everyday commerce depended heavily on small change. Pennies were still widely used, and the U.S. Mint produced them in enormous numbers to keep up with demand. In 1988 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 5 billion Lincoln cents. That is billion with a B because of those huge numbers. Many people assume this coin can never be valuable. But coin collecting is not just about how many were made. It's about condition, mistakes, survival, and stories that only time can reveal. The design of the 1988 Lincoln penny is the familiar one most Americans grew up with. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, a portrait first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of his birth. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head. Liberty is to the left, and the date sits to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands proudly, with tiny statues visible between the columns if you look closely. This design was nearing the end of its long run. Just 1 year later, in 1989, the U.S. Mint would begin preparations for the bicentennial of Lincoln's birth. So the 1988 penny represents the final stretch of a classic American coin design before a major historical milestone. In terms of metal, the 1988 penny is made mostly of zinc, with a thin outer layer of copper. This composition began in 1982 when rising copper prices made solid copper pennies too expensive to produce. While older pennies feel heavier and more solid, the 1988 penny is lighter and more fragile. This matters because zinc pennies are more likely to corrode, bubble, or discolor over time, making high-quality examples harder to find today. At first glance, nothing about the 1988 no-mint mark penny seems rare. In average condition, it is usually worth just 1 cent. But the story changes when you look closer. Collectors pay close attention to condition. A penny that has never been used in circulation, with full original shine and no wear, is called uncirculated. Because pennies are handled so frequently, truly uncirculated examples from everyday years like 1988 are less common than people think. Many were damaged during storage, transport, or counting machines. A 1988 no-mint mark penny in pristine condition can sell for anywhere from a few dollars to over $20, depending on quality. Coins graded by professional services at the highest levels with perfect surfaces and sharp details have sold for several $100s at auction. These are rare survivors, not because few were made, but because few stayed perfect. Errors are where the real excitement begins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during the minting process. These mistakes can include off-center strikes, missing letters, doubled images, or improper metal bonding. While error coins from Philadelphia in 1988 are not common, they do exist. One type collectors look for is a doubled die, where parts of the design appear slightly doubled due to a misaligned die. While the most famous doubled die from this era is the 1988 D from Denver, minor doubled features have been found on some Philadelphia coins as well. These are subtle and often missed by the untrained eye. Other errors include clipped planchets, where part of the coin is missing due to a metal cutting mistake, and broad strikes, where the coin spreads out because the retaining collar failed. Even small errors can push the value from 1 cent to $50 or more, depending on how dramatic the mistake is. There have been real auction results that show why collectors still care about this penny. High-grade 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln cents, professionally graded, have sold at major coin auctions for prices that surprise casual collectors. Coins graded near the top of the scale have crossed the $1,000 mark when competition between collectors is strong. These prices are not common, but they are real. They show that even modern coins can become valuable under the right conditions. If you're wondering how to identify a real 1988 no-mint mark penny, the process is simple. First, check the date. It should clearly read 1988. Next, look just below the date. If there is no letter, that means it was minted in Philadelphia. If you see a D, it came from Denver. If you see an S, it was made in San Francisco, usually for proof sets. Next, examine the coin's surface. Real coins will show consistent where patterns and natural color. Fake pennies are extremely rare because the coin itself is low value, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify dates or remove mint marks. Under magnification, tampering often leaves scratches, uneven surfaces, or unnatural textures. Weight can also help. A normal 1988 penny weighs about 2.5 grams. Significant differences may suggest damage or alteration. However, normal wear can slightly reduce weight, so this is only one clue, not proof. One surprising fact about the 1988 penny is how many people still have them without realizing it. Millions are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old coffee cans across the country. Because the year doesn't stand out, they are often overlooked when people search for valuable coins. Another interesting detail is how short the Lincoln Memorial design era feels today. For decades, it was the standard reverse of the penny. Yet since 2009, the design has changed multiple times, making older memorial pennies feel more historical with each passing year. Collectors love the 1988 no-mint mark penny not because it is flashy, but because it represents the everyday side of American history. It was used by children buying candy, adults paying tolls, and families saving spare change. It passed through countless hands during a time of economic stability and cultural change. For new collectors, this coin is approachable. It's affordable, easy to find, and teaches valuable lessons about grading, errors, and the importance of condition. For experienced collectors, finding a perfect or unusual example can be a satisfying challenge. The real magic of this penny is not guaranteed riches. It's the idea that value can hide in ordinary places. A coin you've seen 1,000 times can suddenly feel different when you understand its story, its journey, and the tiny details that set one example apart from another. So the next time you come across a 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment. Look closely. You might be holding a small piece of American history that still has secrets to share, and sometimes those secrets are worth far more than a single cent. Have you ever looked at a simple penny and wondered if it might be hiding a secret? A coin you've carried in your pocket for years, spent without thinking, could actually tell a fascinating story about American history, everyday life, and the world of collectors. Today, we're talking about a coin almost everyone has seen, but very few truly understand. The 1979 Lincoln penny with no mint mark. At first glance, the 1979 no mint mark Lincoln penny looks ordinary. It's small, copper-colored, and familiar. But behind that simple appearance is a story connected to America in the late 1970s, a time of change, uncertainty, and transition. This penny was part of daily life for millions of people, passed from hand to hand, used to buy candy, newspapers, and cups of coffee. And yet, decades later, collectors still search through jars and rolls looking for special examples of this exact coin. So what exactly is the 1979 no mint mark Lincoln penny? No mint mark means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. During that time, pennies produced in Philadelphia did not carry a letter under the date. Coins from Denver had a D, and coins from San Francisco had an S. If your 1979 penny has no letter below the date, it came from Philadelphia, the oldest mint in the United States. The year 1979 was an interesting moment in American history. The country was dealing with high inflation, rising gas prices, and economic stress. People were paying close attention to their money, and coins like the Lincoln penny were used constantly in everyday transactions. The U.S. Mint was producing huge numbers of cents to keep up with demand, and the Lincoln Memorial penny was still the standard design, just as it had been since 1959. This design featured Abraham Lincoln on the front, facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head. To the left was the word "Liberty," and to the right was the date, 1979. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stood proudly in the center, with United States of America along the top and 1 cent along the bottom. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the most detailed designs ever used on a U.S. coin. The metal composition of the 1979 penny is also important. It was made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This was near the end of the era of mostly copper pennies. Just a few years later, in 1982, the mint would switch to a mostly zinc composition with a thin copper coating. Because of this, many collectors appreciate 1979 pennies as part of the final generation of traditional copper cents. Now here's the big question. Is the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny rare or valuable? In general, most of these pennies are very common. The Philadelphia Mint produced billions of them. That means if you find one in average condition, it's usually worth just 1 cent or maybe a few cents to a collector. But that's not the whole story. Value in coin collecting often comes from condition and mistakes. While most 1979 pennies are common, some examples stand out because they were struck especially well or because something went wrong during the minting process. Coins in extremely high condition, with bright original color and no wear at all, can be worth significantly more than face value. For example, a 1979 no-mint mark penny graded in top condition by a professional grading service can sell for $50, $100, or even more, depending on the quality. These are coins that look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint. They were never used in circulation and were carefully preserved for decades. Even more interesting are error coins. Errors happen when something goes wrong during production. On 1979 pennies, collectors look for off-center strikes, where the design is not properly centered on the coin. Some coins were struck on slightly wrong metal blanks, or show doubling in the lettering due to a misalignment during striking. These errors are not common, and when verified as real, they can add significant value. There have been auction results where unusual 1979 no-mint mark error pennies sold for several $100s. These are not everyday finds, but they do exist, and that's why people keep checking their change. The possibility, however small, creates excitement and curiosity. Of course, whenever money is involved, there's also the risk of fakes or misunderstandings. So how can you tell if your 1979 no-mint mark penny is real and worth a closer look? First, check the date and the area below it. If there is no letter, it's from Philadelphia. Next, look at the weight. A real 1979 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A significant difference could be a sign of damage or something unusual. Examine the details closely. The lettering should be sharp, not blurry. The surface should show natural wear or shine, not signs of casting or artificial aging. If you think you found an error, compare it to images from trusted coin resources, or consider having it evaluated by a professional coin dealer or grading service. One surprising fact about the 1979 penny is how many are still out there. Because so many were made, millions remain in circulation even today. That means you can still find them in pocket change, coin jars, or old piggy banks. Unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, this is a piece of history you can still hold in your hand. Another interesting detail is how emotional these coins can be for collectors. For many people, the 1979 penny brings back memories of childhood, of simpler times, of learning how money works. Collecting isn't always about profit. Sometimes it's about connection, nostalgia, and preserving a small piece of the past. Collectors today love the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny because it represents the everyday America of the late 1970s. It's a reminder of a time before digital payments, before online banking, when coins mattered more in daily life. It also sits right before major changes in penny production, making it an important marker in the timeline of U.S. coinage. So is the 1979 no-mint mark Lincoln penny going to make you rich overnight? Probably not. But could it be more interesting and more valuable than you ever expected? Absolutely. Especially if it's in excellent condition or shows a genuine mint error. The next time you see a penny dated 1979, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment. Look closely. Think about where it's been and what it represents. In that small copper coin is a story of history, craftsmanship, and human curiosity. And who knows? The penny you almost ignored today might be the one that sparks a new interest, a new collection, or a deeper appreciation for the hidden stories in everyday objects. Sometimes, the most ordinary things are the ones worth looking at twice. Imagine reaching into a jar of old pennies, pulling one out without much thought, and realizing it might carry a story from nearly half a century ago. A story tied to American history, everyday life, and a coin that millions of people have handled without ever really looking at it. Today, that story belongs to the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny. This coin may look ordinary at first glance. It's small, brown, and familiar. But behind its simple appearance is a fascinating chapter in U.S. coin history, one that still captures the attention of collectors and curious coin owners today. The 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint. When people say no-mint mark, they are usually talking about coins made in Philadelphia. During that time, Philadelphia pennies did not carry a mint mark, unlike coins made in Denver or San Francisco. So when you see a 1978 penny without a letter under the date, it means it was struck in Philadelphia. By 1978, the Lincoln penny had already been part of American life for nearly 70 years. It was first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth. This made it the first regularly circulating U.S. coin to feature a real historical person instead of a symbolic figure. By the late 1970s, the Lincoln penny had become one of the most recognized coins in the country. The year 1978 itself is important. America was going through a time of economic change. Inflation was rising, prices were climbing, and people were paying closer attention to money than they had in years. Pennies still mattered in daily transactions. You could buy candy, newspapers, and small essentials with loose change. Millions of pennies were minted to keep up with demand, and the 1978 no-mint mark penny was part of that massive production. These pennies were made primarily of copper. In fact, 1978 is part of the final era of mostly copper Lincoln cents. Each coin contains about 95% copper and 5% zinc, weighing 3.11 grams. Just a few years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint would switch to a copper-plated zinc composition. Because of this, many collectors see 1978 as part of the classic copper Lincoln penny years. On the front of the coin, you'll see the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln. This design was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner and has remained largely unchanged for decades. Lincoln faces to the right, with the word liberty to the left, the date to the right, and the phrase "In God We Trust" across the top. It's a design that feels timeless and instantly recognizable. The back of the 1978 penny features the Lincoln Memorial. This reverse design was introduced in 1959 and was used until 2008. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside. This means Lincoln appears on both sides of the coin, a detail many people never notice. At first glance, the 1978 no-mint mark penny does not seem rare. In fact, hundreds of millions were produced. That's why most examples you find in pocket change are worth only 1 cent. However, the real story begins when you look closer at condition, details, and possible minting errors. Coin condition plays a huge role in value. A worn 1978 penny that has circulated for decades will not bring much interest from collectors. But a coin that looks nearly new, with sharp details, strong color, and no visible wear, is a different story. High-grade examples, especially those that appear bright red instead of brown, are far more desirable. Collectors use color categories to describe copper pennies. Red pennies are those that still retain most of their original copper shine. Red-brown coins have a mix of shine and darker tones, while brown coins have fully toned over time. A 1978 no-mint mark penny in full red condition is much harder to find than most people expect. Then there are errors. Mint errors are one of the biggest reasons an otherwise common penny can become valuable. Some 1978 pennies were struck off-center, meaning the design is not properly aligned. Others may show doubled details, where letters or numbers appear slightly repeated due to a misalignment during the minting process. One of the most talked about error types is doubling in the date or lettering. True doubled die errors are rare and occur when the coin die itself is misaligned during creation. These errors are different from simple machine doubling and can significantly increase a coin's value. There are also clipped planchet errors, where part of the coin is missing due to a cutting mistake before striking. Broad strike errors, where the coin spreads out wider than normal, and die cracks, which leave raised lines on the coin, are all possibilities collectors watch for in 1978 pennies. When it comes to value, most 1978 no-mint mark pennies are worth 1 cent in circulated condition. However, uncirculated examples can sell for more. A well-preserved red coin might sell for a few dollars, while top-quality examples graded by professional services have sold for much higher amounts. In some cases, pristine examples graded at the highest levels have sold at auction for hundreds of dollars. These prices are not common, but they are real. They show how condition and rarity within a common issue can dramatically change value. Error coins can be even more impressive. A strong doubled die or a dramatic off-center strike can sell for tens or even hundreds of dollars, depending on how clear and appealing the error is. These are the kinds of finds that keep collectors searching through rolls of pennies and old jars of change. Of course, with value comes the risk of fakes or misunderstandings. It's important to know how to identify a real 1978 no-mint mark penny. First, check the date and look for the absence of a mint mark under it. Next, weigh the coin. A genuine 1978 penny should weigh close to 3.11 grams. A digital scale can help with this. Look closely at the design details. Authentic coins have crisp lettering and clear features, even when worn. Be cautious of claims about rare errors. Many coins show minor marks or wear that can look unusual but are not true mint errors. When in doubt, comparing your coin to verified examples online or consulting a professional coin dealer is a smart move. One fun fact about the 1978 penny is how many people unknowingly saved them. During the 1970s, rumors circulated that copper pennies might become valuable because of rising metal prices. As a result, many families started setting aside jars and rolls of pennies. Some of those collections are being rediscovered today. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design makes it one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. This subtle detail adds to the charm and historical interest of the coin. Collectors today love the 1978 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in general, but because it represents a moment in time. It's part of the final stretch of copper pennies, part of the long-running Lincoln Memorial design, and part of everyday American history. It reminds people of a time when coins were made differently and used more often. For beginners, it's an accessible entry point into coin collecting. For experienced collectors, it's a challenge to find the best possible example or a genuine error. And for everyday people, it's a reminder that even the smallest coins can carry stories worth exploring. So the next time you come across a 1978 penny with no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a moment to look at its color, its condition, and its details. You might just be holding a small piece of American history, quietly waiting to be noticed. And who knows, the penny you almost overlooked today could spark a new curiosity tomorrow, leading you deeper into the fascinating world hidden inside everyday change. Imagine pulling a single penny from your pocket and wondering, what if this quiet little coin has a story far bigger than its face value? A coin so common that millions pass through American hands, yet still powerful enough to spark curiosity, debate, and real collector interest. Today, we're talking about the 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin almost everyone has seen, but very few have truly understood. At first glance, the 1975 Lincoln penny looks ordinary. It's brown, copper-colored, and familiar. But what makes this coin interesting is not flashy rarity or instant riches. It's the story behind it, the era it came from, and the subtle details that collectors pay close attention to. This is the kind of coin that teaches you how value in coin collecting really works. The 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln penny was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. In that era, pennies made in Philadelphia did not carry a mint mark. That's why the space below the date, where you might expect to see a small letter, is completely blank. This is normal and correct for the year. The coin features Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design first introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. On the back, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial, a design used from 1959 until 2008. To understand this coin, you need to understand the time it was made. The year 1975 sits right in the middle of a challenging period in American history. The country was recovering from the Vietnam War, dealing with inflation, and adjusting to major economic changes. Just a few years earlier, in 1973 and 1974, copper prices had risen sharply. This caused widespread concern that the metal in pennies was worth more than the coin itself. As a result, people began hoarding pennies, and the U.S. Mint experimented with different metals. Aluminum cents were tested, and changes were discussed at the highest levels. But in 1975, the Lincoln penny was still made primarily of copper. Specifically, it contains about 95% copper, with the remaining 5% made of zinc and a small amount of tin. This makes the 1975 penny part of the last generation of mostly copper cents, before the major switch in 1982 to copper-plated zinc pennies. That alone gives the 1975 no-mint mark penny a special place in history. It represents the end of an era. Many collectors appreciate it not because it is rare, but because it belongs to a metal composition that no longer exists in modern U.S. cents. Design-wise, the coin stayed consistent with earlier years. Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front was created by sculptor Victor David Brenner. If you look closely at Lincoln's shoulder, you'll find Brenner's initials, VDB, a quiet signature from more than a century ago. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial appears, and if your eyes are sharp, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the building. It's one of the few U.S. coins where the same person appears on both sides. So if millions were made, why do people still talk about the 1975 penny? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector psychology. While the coin itself is common, finding one in exceptional condition is not. Most 1975 pennies were heavily used. They sat in jars, rolled through vending machines, and spent decades in circulation. As a result, high-grade examples with sharp details, strong luster, and minimal wear are much harder to find today. Coins are graded on a scale, and while we won't dive into technical terms, the idea is simple. The better the condition, the more collectors are willing to pay. A worn 1975 penny is worth 1 cent. A clean, shiny example pulled from a roll and never used might be worth a few dollars. But when you get into top-condition examples, values can rise dramatically. There have been verified auction sales where pristine 1975 no-mint mark Lincoln pennies sold for over $100, sometimes more, depending on the grading and eye appeal. These are not everyday prices, but they are real results from serious collectors who want the best possible example. Then there are errors, which are where excitement truly builds. Error coins are mistakes made during the minting process. While no famous, legendary error defines the 1975 penny the way some other years are known, there are still genuine errors that collectors search for. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly aligned. There are doubled dies, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled due to a misaligned die. There are also clipped planchets, where a piece of the coin's edge is missing. A real and dramatic mint error on a 1975 no-mint mark penny can sell for hundreds of dollars, sometimes more. The key is that the error must be authentic and clearly visible. Damage that happens after the coin leaves the mint does not count. Because values can rise with condition and errors, people often ask how to identify a real 1975 penny and avoid fakes or misunderstandings. The first step is simple. Check the date carefully. It should read 1975 with no letter below it. If you see a D or an S, it was made in Denver or San Francisco, not Philadelphia. Next, look at the color and weight. A genuine 1975 penny should have the warm tone of copper and weigh about 3.11 grams. A scale can help, but normal wear can cause slight differences. If the coin looks unusually bright, lightweight, or magnetic, it may have been altered or damaged. Be cautious with claims of extreme value. The 1975 penny is not a secret million-dollar coin. Anyone saying otherwise is spreading misinformation. Real value comes from verified grading, documented errors, and actual auction results. Serious collectors rely on trusted grading services and established marketplaces. One fun fact about the 1975 penny is that it was produced in enormous numbers. Over 5 billion pennies were struck in Philadelphia that year alone. That means these coins were everywhere. They were in school lunch lines, payphones, parking meters, and couch cushions across America. Almost every adult alive today has used one at some point, whether they remember it or not. Another interesting detail is how these pennies connect generations. Many people first got interested in coins by sorting through a parent's or grandparent's jar of change. The 1975 penny shows up often in these collections, acting as a bridge between casual curiosity and serious collecting. Collectors today love this coin for what it represents. It's affordable, accessible, and rich with history. You don't need a fortune to start collecting Lincoln pennies, and the 1975 no-mint mark coin is a perfect example of how everyday objects can carry deep historical meaning. It teaches patience, observation, and respect for detail. It also reminds collectors that value is not always about rarity alone. Sometimes it's about condition, context, and story. A common coin in perfect shape can be more desirable than a rare coin in poor condition. That lesson applies not just to coins, but to collecting as a whole. As you look at a 1975 Lincoln penny, you're not just looking at copper and metal. You're holding a piece of American life from the mid-1970s, a time of change, uncertainty, and resilience, a time when even a single penny mattered. So the next time you see a small brown coin with the date 1975 and no mint mark, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Check the details. Think about where it's been and how many hands it passed through. You might not find a fortune, but you will find a story worth knowing. And sometimes, that quiet curiosity is exactly what turns an ordinary penny into something unforgettable. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second thought. It looks ordinary. It feels ordinary. But what if I told you that a simple 1968 Lincoln penny with no mint mark could still surprise collectors today, and in the right condition be worth far more than 1 cent? This is the story of the 1968 no mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin born during a time of change in America, quietly sitting in jars, drawers, and old collections, waiting to be understood. The 1968 no mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1 cent coin struck in the United States. When you see no letter under the date on the front of the coin, it means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint. Unlike coins from Denver or San Francisco, which carry a D or an S, Philadelphia pennies in 1968 were left without a mint mark. That small missing detail is what often makes people pause and look closer. To understand this coin, we need to go back to the late 1960s. America was going through a turbulent era. The Vietnam War, cultural change, and economic pressure were shaping everyday life. Coin collecting had also changed. Just a few years earlier, in 1965, the U.S. government removed silver from most circulating coins. People had started hoarding older money, and the mint struggled to keep enough coins in circulation. By 1968, the mint was finally catching up. Coin production returned to normal levels, and mint marks were officially restored after being removed for several years. This made 1968 an important transition year. It marked a return to tradition, including the use of mint marks again, except in Philadelphia, where the tradition of no mint mark continued. The 1968 penny kept the classic Lincoln design that Americans had known for decades. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln's profile, facing right. This design was created by Victor David Brenner and first appeared in 1909 to honor Lincoln's 100th birthday. By 1968, this portrait had already been in use for nearly 60 years, making it one of the most recognizable images in American history. On the back of the coin, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial. This reverse design debuted in 1959 and shows the famous Washington, D.C. monument, with a tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible between the columns if you look closely. For many people, this detail went unnoticed for years. The metal composition of the 1968 penny is also important. It is made mostly of copper, about 95% copper and 5% zinc. These pennies are heavier and richer in color than modern pennies made after 1982, which contain much less copper. When people talk about the solid feel of older pennies, this is what they mean. At first glance, the 1968 no mint mark penny does not seem rare. Millions were made. In fact, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 1 billion pennies that year. Because of this, most worn examples are still only worth 1 or 2 cents. But coin value is not just about how many were made. It is about condition, mistakes, and demand. This is where the story becomes more interesting. Collectors care deeply about condition. A 1968 penny that has spent decades in circulation will show scratches, dull color, and worn details. But a coin that was never used, known as an uncirculated coin, can look almost brand new. Bright red copper color, sharp details, and clean surfaces can make a dramatic difference in value. High-grade uncirculated 1968 no-mint mark pennies have sold for surprising amounts. Coins graded in top condition by professional grading services have reached prices ranging from several $100s to over $1,000 at auction. These are not everyday sales, but they are real examples that show how condition changes everything. Errors and varieties also play a major role in value. Some 1968 pennies were struck with mistakes that collectors actively search for. These include doubled dies, where parts of the design appear doubled, especially in the date or lettering. There are also off-center strikes, where the design is shifted, leaving part of the coin blank. Another known issue is weak strikes, where details appear soft due to worn dies. One of the most talked about varieties from this era involves doubled die obverse coins. While not extremely common, they exist, and when confirmed, they can be worth significantly more than a normal penny. Even small doubling visible to the naked eye can turn a 1-cent coin into a collector piece worth hundreds of dollars. So how do you know if your 1968 penny is real and worth checking further? First, look under the date. If there is no letter, it was made in Philadelphia. That alone does not make it valuable, but it confirms the type. Next, check the color. A bright reddish tone usually means less wear, while brown or dark copper suggests circulation. Then examine the details. Look closely at the date, the word liberty, and the phrase "in God we trust." Any doubling, unusual thickness, or uneven spacing could be important. Weight can also help. A genuine 1968 penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. A digital scale can easily confirm this. While fakes are rare for common pennies, altered coins do exist, especially when someone tries to pass off a damaged coin as an error. One of the surprising facts about the 1968 penny is how many were saved without people realizing it. During the late 1960s and early 1970s, many Americans still saved rolls of new pennies, believing copper would one day be valuable. As a result, uncirculated examples still appear today, but truly perfect ones are much harder to find than most people expect. Another interesting detail is that 1968 was one of the first years when proof pennies were again produced at the San Francisco Mint, marked with an S. This makes it easy for beginners to confuse proof coins with regular ones. Proof coins have mirror-like surfaces and sharper details, while the no mint mark penny is a regular circulation coin. Collectors today appreciate the 1968 no mint mark penny not because it is legendary or ultra-rare, but because it represents a moment in American history. It comes from a time when the country was changing rapidly, yet everyday objects like pennies remained familiar and constant. For new collectors, this coin is approachable. It can still be found in old collections, bank rolls, and inherited jars of change. For experienced collectors, it offers a challenge, especially when hunting for high-grade examples or confirmed error varieties. The real value of this penny often lies in the search itself. Many collectors remember the first time they examined a simple coin and realized there was more to it than face value. The 1968 no mint mark penny invites that curiosity. It encourages people to slow down, look closely, and learn something new. So the next time you come across an old penny with the date 1968 and no letter beneath it, don't dismiss it too quickly. Hold it up to the light. Check the details. Think about where it has been and what it has seen over the past half-century. Because sometimes the most ordinary-looking coins carry the most interesting stories. And the truth is, you never know when a simple penny might turn out to be something worth keeping, studying, or even passing on to the next generation. That quiet little coin in your hand might not just be spare change. It might be a small piece of American history, still waiting to be noticed. Take a moment and imagine this. A penny that looks completely ordinary, one you may have held hundreds of times, could be quietly hiding a story from one of the most unusual periods in American coin history. No special mark. No flashy design change, just a simple 1967 Lincoln penny. And yet collectors still search for it every day. Why does this everyday coin still matter? The coin we are talking about is the 1967 Lincoln 1-cent penny with no mint mark. At first glance, it looks like a normal brown copper penny with Abraham Lincoln's face on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back. Millions were made, and many are still in circulation today. But this coin was born during a very specific moment in U.S. history, when the rules of coin collecting were quietly rewritten. To understand the 1967 penny, we have to go back to the mid-1960s. During this time, the United States was facing a serious coin shortage. People were pulling coins out of circulation, not because they were rare, but because rising silver prices made many coins worth more as metal than as money. This caused everyday problems. Stores struggled to make change, vending machines went empty, and the public began to panic about coins. In response, the U.S. government made a bold decision. From 1965 through 1967, the U.S. Mint removed mint marks from all coins. That meant no D for Denver, no S for San Francisco, and no identifying mark at all. The goal was simple. If people could not tell where a coin was made, they might be less likely to hoard them. The 1967 Lincoln penny is a direct result of that decision. So when you see a 1967 penny with no mint mark, that is not a mistake. That is exactly how it was supposed to be. Every 1967 Lincoln cent was struck without a mint mark, regardless of where it was produced. This alone makes the coin historically interesting, even if it is not automatically rare. The design of the 1967 penny follows the familiar Lincoln memorial style. On the front, you see Abraham Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, Liberty to the left, and the date 1967 to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands centered, with United States of America and E pluribus unum above and 1 cent below. The metal composition is another important feature. The 1967 penny is made of 95% copper and 5% zinc. This is the classic bronze composition that many people associate with older pennies. Unlike modern cents, which are mostly zinc with a thin copper coating, the 1967 penny has real weight and a deeper copper tone that collectors appreciate. While the coin itself is common, certain details can make one example far more valuable than another. Condition plays a huge role. A heavily worn 1967 penny that has been in circulation for decades is usually worth only face value or slightly more. But a penny that looks almost untouched, with sharp details and bright original color, can attract collector interest. Errors are where things get truly interesting. Some 1967 pennies were struck with mistakes that make them stand out. These can include doubled letters, where parts of the design appear slightly repeated. Others show off-center strikes, missing letters, or unusual surface textures. These errors happened at the mint and were never meant to reach the public. Collectors love mint errors because they are unpredictable. No two are exactly the same. A clear and dramatic error on a 1967 penny can sell for tens, hundreds, or in rare cases, even thousands of dollars, depending on how noticeable and well-preserved it is. There have been real auction examples that prove this. High-grade 1967 pennies, especially those certified by professional grading services, have sold for surprising prices. A nearly perfect example with full detail and rich color can sell for several $100s. Error coins from this year have sold for even more when collectors compete for them. It is important to understand that most 1967 pennies are not worth a fortune. But the excitement comes from the possibility. Anyone can find one. They are still out there in jars, drawers, and old collections. That sense of discovery is a big part of what keeps collectors searching. If you think you may have a valuable 1967 penny, there are a few simple things to check. First, look closely at the date. It should clearly read 1967. Next, check just below the date. You should not see any mint mark. This is normal and correct for this year. Then examine the condition. Are the details sharp, especially on Lincoln's face and the Lincoln Memorial? Is the surface smooth without heavy scratches? Coins that look cleaner and more detailed are more desirable. After that, look for errors. Use a magnifying glass if possible. Check the letters in Liberty and In God We Trust. Look at the numbers in the date. If anything looks doubled, misaligned, or incomplete, you may have something special. Be cautious about fakes or altered coins. Some people try to make common pennies look valuable by damaging them on purpose. True mint errors usually show smooth, natural metal flow, not rough or scraped surfaces. When in doubt, professional coin dealers or grading services can help verify authenticity. One fun fact about the 1967 penny is that it represents the end of an era. Just a few years later, in 1982, the U.S. Mint changed the penny's composition to mostly zinc. That makes 1967 part of the last generation of full-weight copper cents that many collectors prefer. Another surprising detail is that even though mint marks were removed, multiple mints were still producing coins at the same time. The no mint mark policy did not slow production at all. In fact, it increased output to meet public demand. This is why so many 1967 pennies exist today. Collectors also appreciate this coin because it connects to a real economic moment. It tells a story about inflation, public behavior, and how the government responded. Coins are not just money. They are historical documents you can hold in your hand. Today, collectors continue to seek out 1967 pennies for many reasons. Beginners like them because they are affordable and easy to find. Advanced collectors enjoy searching for high-grade examples and unusual errors. And history lovers value the story behind the coin just as much as the metal itself. The 1967 no-mint mark Lincoln penny may not make you rich overnight, but it offers something just as valuable. It offers connection. Connection to the past, to a time when a simple design change reflected national concerns and quiet solutions. So the next time you come across a penny dated 1967, don't dismiss it too quickly. Take a closer look. Turn it over. Study the details. You might be holding a small piece of American history that has traveled through decades to reach you. And that is the real magic of coins like this. They remind us that even the most ordinary objects can carry extraordinary stories, waiting patiently to be noticed. Imagine reaching into a jar of old change, pulling out a penny dated the year 2000, and wondering for a moment, could this simple coin be hiding something special? Millions of people overlook it every day, yet collectors keep checking this exact penny again and again. Today, we're uncovering the true story behind the 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, why it exists, what makes some examples surprisingly valuable, and how to tell if the one you have is just spare change or something more. The coin we're talking about is the Lincoln 1-cent coin dated 2000 with no mint mark. If there is no small letter under the date, that means it was struck at the Philadelphia Mint. This penny looks ordinary at first glance, just like countless others made around the turn of the millennium. But coins from this year sit at a very interesting moment in U.S. history, and certain details make them far more interesting than most people realize. The year 2000 marked the beginning of a new millennium, and the United States Mint was producing coins in massive numbers to meet everyday demand. Lincoln pennies were still one of the most widely used coins in circulation. The design featured Abraham Lincoln on the front, a portrait that had been used since 1909, and on the back, the familiar Lincoln Memorial, which appeared on pennies from 1959 through 2008. At the time, nobody thought these coins would be special. They were made to be spent, not saved. In the year 2000 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck more than 5 billion Lincoln pennies. That is an enormous number, and it explains why most 2000 no-mint mark pennies are still very common today. But history isn't just about how many coins were made. It's also about what was changing behind the scenes. The metal composition of the penny had already shifted years earlier. By 2000, pennies were made mostly of zinc, with a very thin copper coating on the outside. This change reduced costs, but it also created opportunities for unusual mint errors and variations. When you look closely at a 2000 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, you'll notice familiar details. Lincoln's profile faces right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, liberty to the left and the date to the right. Under the date, there is no mint mark, which confirms it came from Philadelphia. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands centered, with the words United States of America and 1 cent surrounding it. If you look very carefully between the columns of the memorial, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside, a detail many people never notice. So if billions were made, why do collectors still care about this penny? The answer lies in varieties and errors. Not every 2000 penny is the same. Some were struck with subtle differences that can dramatically affect value. One of the most famous varieties associated with this year is the 2000 wide AM penny. Normally on Lincoln Memorial cents, the letters A and M in the word America on the reverse are very close together, almost touching. On the wide AM variety, there is a noticeable gap between the A and the M. This happened because the wrong reverse design was accidentally used, one intended for proof coins rather than regular circulation strikes. The 2000 wide AM penny was not supposed to exist in everyday pocket change, yet some slipped out into circulation. These coins can be worth far more than 1 cent, especially in higher condition. Depending on where, a genuine 2000 wide AM penny can sell for anywhere from $20 to over $100, and in exceptional uncirculated condition, even more. There are also other errors collectors look for from this year. Off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned on the coin, can increase value. Broad strikes, where the coin was struck without the collar that gives it a standard shape, are another possibility. Some pennies show doubled letters or numbers due to die doubling, though strong examples are less common. Each of these errors tells a small story about what went wrong during the minting process. Real-world auction results help explain why people keep searching. Standard circulated 2,000 no-mint mark pennies usually sell for just 1 or 2 cents, even in small bulk lots. But error coins tell a different story. Verified 2,000 wide AM pennies have sold at coin shows and online auctions for tens or even hundreds of dollars. High-grade examples certified by professional grading services have reached higher prices, especially when competition among collectors is strong. These are not million-dollar coins, but they are far from ordinary pocket change. With growing interest comes the risk of confusion or fakes, so it's important to know how to identify a genuine coin. Start by checking the date. It must clearly read 2000. Next, look under the date. If there is no D or S mint mark, it is a Philadelphia coin. Then flip it over and examine the word America on the reverse. Use a magnifying glass if possible. If the A and M are clearly separated, not nearly touching, you may have a wide AM variety. Be careful, though. Wear, damage, or lighting can make letters appear wider than they really are. Comparing your coin to clear reference images is essential. Weight can also help. A normal 2,000 penny should weigh about 2.5 grams. A significant difference could indicate damage, plating issues, or an unusual error. Avoid cleaning the coin. Cleaning can reduce value instantly, even if the coin is rare. If you believe you found something special, the safest next step is to have it examined by a reputable coin dealer or professional grading service. There are some fun and surprising facts about the 2000 Lincoln penny that make it even more interesting. Many people saved coins from the year 2000 as keepsakes, believing they would be valuable simply because of the millennium date. Ironically, this widespread saving is one reason most examples are still common today. Another interesting detail is that pennies from this era are more fragile than older copper pennies. The zinc core can corrode if the copper coating is damaged, leading to bubbling or pitting over time. Collectors today love the 2000 no mint mark penny not because every example is rare, but because it represents a turning point. It comes from the last full decade of the Lincoln Memorial reverse, before the design changed in 2009. It sits at the intersection of modern mass production and collectible varieties. It's also a reminder that valuable coins aren't always old or made of precious metal. Sometimes value comes from small mistakes and careful observation. For many collectors, this penny is a gateway coin. It encourages people to look more closely at their change, to learn about mint marks, errors, and history. It proves that coin collecting doesn't have to start with expensive purchases. It can start with curiosity and a simple penny already in your pocket. So the next time you see a 2000 no mint mark Lincoln penny, don't dismiss it too quickly. Turn it over, look closely, check the details. Most of the time it will just be a cent. But once in a while it could be a fascinating piece of modern American coin history hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice it. Imagine finding a penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet it quietly carries a story most people never notice. A coin so common that millions overlook it every day, yet certain examples have sold for surprising prices. Today, we're uncovering the truth behind the 2005 no mint mark Lincoln penny, and why it deserves a second look before you spend it. The 2005 no mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin produced by the United States Mint during a year of massive change in American coinage. At first glance, it looks just like countless other Lincoln pennies, but its story is tied to history, transition, and a few hidden surprises that collectors still search for today. When people say no mint mark, it often creates instant curiosity. On U.S. coins, a mint mark tells you where the coin was made. For pennies struck in Philadelphia, especially during modern years like 2005, there is typically no mint mark at all. So a 2005 penny without a letter under the date means it was made at the Philadelphia Mint, the oldest and most historic mint in the country. The year 2005 itself is important. The United States was in the middle of a major transition in coin production. Just a few years earlier, in 1982, the penny changed from mostly copper to mostly zinc. By 2005, the Lincoln cent was firmly established as a copper-plated zinc coin, but rising metal costs were already causing concern at the mint. Every penny cost close to, or sometimes more than, 1 cent to produce. That made each coin part of a bigger economic conversation, even if people didn't realize it at the time. The design of the 2005 Lincoln penny follows the classic style that Americans had known for decades. On the front, or obverse, is the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln, designed by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln's calm profile faces to the right, with the word liberty behind him and the phrase, "In God we trust," above his head. The date 2005 appears in front of Lincoln, with no mint mark just below it, confirming its Philadelphia origin. The back of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used since 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln sitting inside the memorial. This made the Lincoln cent one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. By 2005, this design was nearing the end of its long run, as the reverse would soon change in 2009 for Lincoln's bicentennial. In terms of metal, the 2005 penny is made of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. It weighs about 2.5 grams and has a smooth edge. While it doesn't contain precious metal, its composition is still important to collectors because errors often occur during plating, striking, or cutting of the metal blanks. So why would anyone care about a 2005 penny that was made by the hundreds of millions? The answer lies in condition, rarity within the ordinary, and minting errors. Most 2005 no-mint mark pennies are only worth 1 cent. Even uncirculated examples are usually worth just a few cents. However, collectors are not looking for the average coin. They are searching for the exceptions. One of the most desirable types is a 2005 penny in perfect, uncirculated condition, with strong detail and original luster. Coins graded by professional services in very high grades can sell for much more than face value. A 2005 Lincoln penny graded MS68 red, which means near-perfect condition with full copper color, has sold for over $1,000 at auction. These are extremely rare because modern pennies are easily damaged during mass production and circulation. Even more exciting are mint errors. In 2005, several types of errors were discovered and saved by collectors. One example is the off-center strike, where the coin design is not properly aligned on the blank. Depending on how dramatic the error is, these coins can sell for anywhere from $50 to several $100s. Another error collectors look for is a broad strike, where the coin is struck without the retaining collar, causing it to spread out wider than normal. Broad-struck 2005 pennies with clear detail have sold for strong premiums. There are also doubled die errors, where parts of the design appear doubled due to a misaligned die during the minting process. These can show doubling on the date, the word liberty, or in God we trust. Genuine doubled die coins are scarce and highly collectible, with values that can range from a few $100s to over $1,000, depending on clarity and condition. Real auction records help separate fact from exaggeration. A standard circulated 2005 no-mint mark penny usually sells for 1 to 5 cents. Uncirculated rolls often sell for a small premium, but certified high-grade examples have reached impressive prices. One professionally graded MS67 red penny sold for several $100s, while an MS68 red example crossed the $1,000 mark at a major auction. Error coins from 2005 have also been sold publicly, confirming real collector demand. Identifying a real 2005 no-mint mark penny is simple, but verifying a valuable one takes careful attention. First, check the date and confirm there is no letter under it. Next, look at the overall condition. Sharp details, bright color, and minimal marks are essential for higher value. Use a magnifying glass to inspect the lettering and date for doubling. Examine the edges and shape for signs of off-center strikes or unusual thickness. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. Some people attempt to create fake errors by damaging coins or altering dates. Real mint errors usually show smooth, natural-looking metal flow and consistent wear patterns. If you believe you have something special, professional grading is the safest way to confirm authenticity and value. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 2005 penny. In that year alone, the Philadelphia Mint produced well over 2 billion Lincoln cents. That means nearly everyone in the United States has handled one at some point. Yet only a tiny fraction survived in pristine condition. Another interesting detail is that 2005 pennies were among the last regular issues before the major design changes of the late 2000s, making them part of the final chapter of the classic memorial reverse era. Collectors today love the 2005 no mint mark penny not because it is rare in general, but because it represents the challenge of modern coin collecting. Finding value in everyday change requires patience, knowledge, and a sharp eye. It's a reminder that history isn't always locked away in museums. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight in a jar, a drawer, or your pocket. The appeal also comes from accessibility. Anyone can start searching for these coins without spending a fortune. That sense of possibility keeps collectors engaged, especially when a simple penny has the potential, under the right circumstances, to be worth hundreds or even thousands of dollars. As you go through your coins, remember this. The 2005 no mint mark Lincoln penny may look ordinary, but it carries the weight of history, the marks of mass production, and the thrill of the hunt. Most will never be worth more than a cent, but a few rare survivors tell a very different story. So the next time you see a 2005 penny, don't rush to spend it. Turn it over. Look closely. Because sometimes, the most ordinary coins hold the most unexpected secrets, and the next one you find might just surprise you.